I was thinking of the first thing to describe her before anything else, and it's a diehard Jets fan. Fran Rotella with ESPN, with NBC, MTV. She has done it all, working with NFL Network as well. We're going to talk about her career and certainly what she has done in the sports space, what makes her inspirational, and learn a lot about her from a professional and certainly learn more about her personal life as well as we talk about her love of sports. I'm Bryan Fenley. I am a national anchor for Fox Sports Radio. I'm on Twitter at Bryan Fenley. So, Fran, before we get into the nitty gritty of what you've done in your career, what does it take internally to be a loyal Jets fan?
It takes a lot. It takes a lot. You gotta be willing to be the butt of a lot of jokes. And by butt, that is a reference to the butt fumble.
Yes.
And get your heart broken every week. Like, it was funny because I would be walking at ESPN from the newsroom to the control room, and people would be yelling, "Your team stinks! Your team stinks!" And it was like, okay, I'm getting heckled even at the office. Bad enough I got to go to the stadium and watch them lose. But yeah, and I'm actually going Sunday. I'll be at the Bills game, so
All
excited
right.
for that.
Yeah, so that'll be interesting considering Mike White has revitalized the team a little bit. So yeah, yeah, exactly. Maybe it's too early to say that just yet. But speaking of working from the office, and one office that recently you've called your office is in Tokyo at the Olympics in 2021. As far as your role in that undertaking, considering the circumstances, what was it like from your experience and what you learned about the human spirit and how they could put something together like they did despite all the obstacles?
Well, it's interesting because, first of all, that Olympic group, what they do is impressive, and they have just set the bar for production so high that it's not even reachable. It's really nice just to kind of take a step back and recognize like all the work that goes into it, um and Tokyo in particular, just the technical aspect of it. Between, they've done a lot of the production back in Stanford,
Sure.
but this, with COVID and not being able to travel and having it get delayed, which then not so much impacts Tokyo, but now impacts Beijing because it sort of rolls into, they're on a timeline, so it was just the technical stuff. I actually worked out of CNBC's studios in Englewood Cliffs, New Jersey, which was funny because when I told people like I'm working on the Olympics, they're like, "You're going to Tokyo?" And I'm like, "No, I'm going to be in New Jersey," which was funny because I was at my family's house at the Jersey Shore at the time. So I didn't even really leave the state I was in. But that was with its own challenges. CNBC is not set up like NBC Sports in Stamford, Connecticut. You don't have all of these feeds coming in, and it's set up for business news. And it really took like an amazing amount of dedication and teamwork, and the way our group, I mean, we were really, a lot of CNBC are still remote, and we're there at night, right, from 8 p.m. Eastern until 4, 5, 6 a.m. So we were the only people in the building. So we're the only people in the building. We're this remote office, right? So we're not in Stanford, and we have to get things remotely. And it really took a tremendous amount of teamwork and dedication. And we were a group of people, a lot of us didn't know each other before we walked in the door on that first day. So to work the hours that we did, to pull it off the way we did, it was probably, when you kind of go through one of the proudest moments I've had. And it was really an amazing experience.
Fran Rotella is with us. I'm Bryan Fenley. When were the first signs of that dedication that you were talking about to putting together what you did with NBC at the Olympics? When the dedication started to show itself when you were first getting into the business, where you relied on that to really help make a name for yourself?
Yeah, I mean, it's really, and I tell people all the time, and I have a lot of people come to me with, look, you got to want it, and you got to want it more than a lot of other things,
Sure.
right? Like, I know there's, some of the conversations you've had with folks, you've got to be willing to not be home for holidays, nights, weekend, you got to be willing to put in the time, put in the hours. And the only way that that's sustainable is to have that passion and that energy. So it's funny, with Thanksgiving approaching, like a producer I worked with at SportsCenter, every year him and I always reach out to each other. I said, I've spent more Thanksgivings with him than I had with my own family. So I really, you got to want it, and you got to love the content and everything that comes with it.
What laid or who laid the groundwork, the foundation for that passion that you're talking about?
I just think it was just a work ethic that I got from my parents, just to do what you love, and to be very supportive of what you do. My and it was funny, like my dad would watch like red carpet shows for the Video Music Awards, and he'd call me the next day and he'd be like, do you know that Jay-Z and Beyonce are a couple? Like, and it was hysterical. Like, I'm like, yes, Dad, thank you, thanks for watching. So I think it's really just having that support from my parents and my sister, and my close group of friends, and just having that support system, really, that sort of kind of gives you that energy to kind of keep going.
I would think that support system also helps you generate really neat ideas for the progression of sports broadcasting, and specifically where you were able to tap into how you think that the future of sports could look like from a broadcast perspective at NFL Network, and being part of the launch of Good Morning Football. What was your role in that, and the ideas that you thought of that you wanted to see implemented in that show?
It was interesting because I came in, they had already sort of done some pre-production, so I wasn't there for that pre-production, the rehearsal. I came in right before that first show launched, and I worked on the overnight. So it was a very unique workflow because I was the only senior at night that was working with the segment producers to prep for the morning. So you're prepping while people are sleeping, and you're leaving notes, and you're hoping that you're communicating enough, but also knowing that when you wake up, they might have thrown everything out the window because, in the NFL, the news is breaking all the time. So um, it was an interesting way to kind of try out this different workflow, and without having a lot of resources too, because we were at that point, the show was just like a startup. So for me, what I really focused on was I had a lot of green segment producers, and really kind of honed on them in the writing and making sure that they were telling the stories and being creative and knowing who they're writing for, all the different voices on the show, and really being able to work with them to get their ideas across. So that was sort of where I felt I could have the most impact on that project.
What does good writing look for you?
It has to be, and it's funny because working at ESPN and with the news desk, and sometimes stories come across, or sometimes you're in the control room and you're writing a story because news is breaking. It needs to be like digestible and understandable. So whether it's a hard news story or a story of interest, you need to be able to set the stage, and so that someone who's just popping in, and maybe I'm not a soccer fan, but you're telling me a soccer story. Well, I got to understand why this is important. Why is this person important? Why is the story important? What is the impact it's going to have? So it really just, but it also, in television, from a linear perspective, it needs to be quick, right? So it needs to be conversational, it needs to be quick, and it needs to be something that your anchor is going to be able to deliver.
Being able to deliver when you are on deadline and you've got to hit the air and you've got to get this news out so quickly, how do you collect yourself in those moments when, oftentimes, there's no time, but right now, and you're
Mhm.
trying to act as quickly as possible to get that on air, make sure you get it right, and then to communicate it with your anchors. So what is that like through that process for you?
You really just need to be that calming force, right? Like, so you need to be decisive,
Mhm.
and you need to be like, you need to communicate that to your anchors, because obviously a lot of times you're talking on a headset. So if they hear that panic in your voice, if they hear you scrambling or
Ah,
frazzled, then they're going to be frazzled. So
interesting.
I got you. Here's the story. I put some copy in, and then getting to that trust point with your talent so that they know that, okay, if there isn't time for someone to take a look at a story in a break, that they're going to just go with it. So, and that also, as a coordinating producer, that's also giving your producer, okay, we got the story. I talked to I like at ESPN because I talked to the desk. We verified it. Here's the story. I put a reader in. We're getting some graphics together. I'm working on getting some guests. So just so they know that you're thinking, so that you're kind of thinking ahead for them. Like I remember, um, I was in the control room the day of the Boston Marathon bombing, and me and the producer, same producer that I had numerous Thanksgivings with, him and I were in the control room, and we barely spoke for 2 hours, and we were constantly live, where I was like, okay, here, I got this person on the phone, I got this. And there was just almost this nonverbal communication between us, and I was feeding him guests and stories and information, and he was just going with it. So it's really a matter of having that trust and being able to communicate with people quickly and efficiently.
As you went off air after putting on that Boston Marathon broadcast, what came to mind right after you signed off?
You just when you kind of deal with those instances, obviously when you get, and it's funny when you talk to people and they're like, oh, well, you just do sports. Well, you have to cover, events like that, which are, that's not just sports, right? Like it's so it takes a minute, then you kind of deal with that, for someone who was a runner for a lot of years and ran these races and knew people who were at the Boston Marathon that day. Then you kind of deal with that emotion that comes with it. And oh my God, I can't believe this just happened. So um, it's hard. And that's why one of the things that I really like respect with a lot of people, in news and in local news specifically, like they're doing that all the time. And it's a tough thing to do. You got to kind of put, emotions aside and just kind of be in it, and you deal with that later.
Yeah, well said. It's not easy, as you mentioned. Fran Rotella is with us, sports media executive. I'm Bryan Fenley with Fox Sports Radio. So you've worked with so much great talent over the years. And I saw a nice comment you made about Trey Wingo, who's been on with me here, somebody I look up to, just the definition of class. What do you remember most about working with him when it came to everything he did NFL wise with ESPN?
I think for Trey, while he is a walking NFL encyclopedia, the base of knowledge and facts, it's really impressive. But I think the thing that doesn't get talked about with Trey is his ability to carry a conversation. And whether it's bringing in anchors or bringing in the analysts and pulling out bits of information where he might know that, Teddy Bruschi has a really strong opinion on something, or, it was the usual group I worked with was Trey and Teddy Bruschi and Mark Schlereth, and just knowing how to pull things out of them. But also we might have a guest analyst or someone on, and how to bring that person in the conversation and not make them feel isolated, and making it kind of seamless. And I think it's an art that he makes look easy, and in practice it's not easy. And I think that's one of his most impressive traits as a broadcaster, something I've really admired.
Barry Melrose also makes it look easy, and he's an analyst. And I know you worked on the NHL coverage as well for ESPN, and I know that that's now returning. So that must be a little bit nostalgic for you to see that. But getting to work with somebody like Barry and just his personality, how did his experiences impact you in what you do?
But it was funny because when I first got to ESPN, I had three goals: to work on the 11 o'clock Sports Center, which I did, to work on the NFL studio shows, which I did, and to work with Barry Melrose. And he actually left to coach the Tampa Bay Lightning like the day before I started there.
Oh my gosh.
And I was like, oh my God, I'm never going to work with him. And then lucky for me, not that I ever wish anyone gets fired, but lucky for me, Barry was not a coach for very long and came back to ESPN and I got to work with him. But he's amazing. And I was lucky enough to travel, with him and Steve Levy and Tony Florkowski has produced numerous Stanley Cup coverages for ESPN, traveled with them to a couple of finals. And, Barry, not only is he willing to do anything and has boundless energy, but his knowledge of the game and just learning so much about the game just by watching with him and being around him. So, he is, he's one of my favorite people. And I'm just so, again, when I think about, like, if you look, think about accomplishments and being able to work with him is something that I'll always cherish. And, we kind of joked about, I'm like, oh, we used to say we'd have hockey department meetings in a broom closet because there was like three people that were working on the end. Now they have this great department, and it's so wonderful because I know there's a lot of people that are still there that are huge hockey fans, and we used to all kind of talk about it, talk about the game and talk about coverage. So I'm really excited, and it's been great to see what they've done with the game so far.
You cherished obviously your time with Barry Melrose. Somebody else who you had the opportunity to work with, who I'm sure had to be one of your favorites, was Pedro Gomez, and someone who left this earth way too early and was such an incredible reporter for ESPN and broadcaster. How do you honor him, and what in what ways did he impact you? And do you think of him as far as how he was able to make a difference in this business?
Well, for him, and it was my last couple of years at ESPN, I was on the NFL solely, so I didn't always get a chance to work with him. But for someone who, I'm a huge hockey fan, I'm a huge NFL fan. I love baseball, but again, it's like I'm learning more about the game. I'm learning more about the nuances, and it was just to see how he reported a story, you know, spoke with the players, and again, it kind of goes back to that level of trust, right? The trust and the relationships that he built with the players was really amazing. And, anytime he was available to do any of the shows, I almost didn't even have to know what I don't care. He could sit there and read the dictionary. I don't care what he does. Like, I know whatever he's going to do or whatever he has to contribute is going to be great. And we always managed to have a couple of laughs, like on the PL before a live shot. And, all of I would say, a lot of the reporters that ESPN has, I mean, they're wonderful and so hardworking, but Pedro really was just someone special, and he made you feel special, right? Like he was always appreciative that he would do whatever. And, it's just being such a pro and such a good person. You often wish that when you meet people that they're as genuine in real life as they come across.
Yeah.
And he was certainly one of them.
He was one of them, and I feel like you are too in getting to know you, because I feel that for you, you really do care about helping bring up others in this business. You're very open with your time in helping guide others in this business. When people can reach a certain level of success, sometimes they get closed off and they don't want to help as much. But as I kind of wrap up this conversation with you, Fran, why does it mean so much for you? And how much fulfillment do you give in seeing how you can make an impact and difference on others that are trying to make it in this business, and why you go above and beyond the whatever responsibility, or you take it to the next level, if you will, to help bring others up in with you.
I just always look to, it's a tough business, and especially, being female and working in sports, a lot of people, your abilities get questioned and your knowledge gets questioned, and it's unfortunate. It's changing, which is amazing. And I have had, the opportunity to work with so many people that I know, trust and respect me, and that trust is mutual. But it's hard, and it's hard to get in the door, and it's hard to climb up the ladder, regardless of, gender, sex, whatever, so just being able, knowing how hard it is, and it's a constant. So being able to help someone, figure out their dreams, or even if it's, and sometimes, some of the people that I've talked to and mentored have said, like, I don't think this is for me. I've had some of my direct reports leave the sports business and go to law school. And it's like, if this helped you make that decision is just as valuable as if you stayed in the business. So I think for me, always having those people to go to, that I go to for advice, makes you want to just kind of, pay it forward and help others. And it's great to see people thrive, like knowing that you could help them out.
They're thriving. You're thriving. You are a shining light in this business, and a bright light. Looking forward to seeing all that you do in your future. Fran Rotella, Bryan Fenley, really appreciate the conversation. Thank you so much for making the time.
Thank you.